Hey, it's Lee. Welcome to Business Problem Solved. Today, I have the immense pleasure of chatting with Jo Reynolds. How are you, Jo?
I'm very, very well. Thank you, love. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, really good. Just before I hit record, I asked you, did your lipstick match your hair? And it does, doesn't it?
Yes, yes, deliberate, deliberate. Not easy to find the matching shades.
What shade is it? Just out of curiosity.
God knows. Eric, my partner does my hair, and he's been doing it for years, and he's so good at my hair. So I don't even try and remember anymore. And I've got a lipstick, and a red lipstick. Any red is a good red, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go. I feel slightly underdressed. I wish I'd have put a little bit more effort into
Yeah, you could
this.
have put a shirt on.
I could, yeah. Apologies. I'll know for next time. For episode two, we will. I'll make sure I dress up a little bit more. Anyway, so for those people who don't know who is Jo Reynolds, and how has she got to sit in this seat today?
Yeah, good question, isn't it? Thank you. Shall I?
Go for it.
Shall I begin?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm a very independently, is there such a word, independently minded girl? So when I was growing up, all I really wanted to do was like to be completely independent of my family. So, so as soon as I was old enough, I started to look for a job. And in those days, back in the 80s, early 80s, it was really, really hard to find a job. My friends were at grammar school in Wales, and I decided to try just to get out as quickly as I could. So I got 4 O levels and looked like I looked in the police cadets and the this, that, and the other. And then I moved up to Norwich to be with my dad, and there was an advert for junior firefighters wanted. And I didn't have a clue what it was, honestly. But I thought, well, I'm just applying for anything I see. So I applied for it. And the next thing you know, I got a letter inviting me to this interview. And so there's like a series of unexpected things that went on. I turned up at this yard, and it was like, 600 boys, all 17-year-old, and me. And
Wow.
there I, and the last thing you ever want to do in life is just stand out. But I was really there standing out. They made me do all these, they did all of us, they made us do these exercises, like you had to hang from a ladder up in the air, 40 foot in the air, to see if you were scared of heights, and touch, thank God I wasn't.
Yeah.
Then you had to like cover your face, crawl through tarpaulins, and again, who knew? But no, I wasn't claustrophobic. And the last thing they asked you to do was to put a 12-stone dummy over your shoulder and run 100 yards under a minute. And I managed it. And I can remember thinking, if I don't do this, if I fail, who knows if they'll ever let any women through this, process again. You just can't tell. And I just felt so kind of determined to do things. And I didn't know I could do it because I'd never tried to do it before. And so, unbeknown to me, it was the first time that Norfolk Fire Service had opened up the doors to women. And it was also the first time that they'd opened it up to 17-year-olds. So it's like a junior firefighter course back in 1982. So that was the first series of interviews. That was the first one, the physical one. And yeah, so who knew I wasn't claustrophobic or could hang upside down from ladders. The next one was at Whitegates in Heatherset, which is where their headquarters is. And it's like this massive old kind of country house mansion. And I turned up there. Again, you're now 17 years old. I got like a waitressing outfit on because I was waitressing locally. Turned up there and I got called upstairs, and it was like this long table in a room in a country house. And yeah, they're saying to me, well, why do you think you should join the fire service? Won't you be a danger for the men to be around? And how can we be sure that you'll be safe, or they'll be safe if they work with you? What happens if you've got different ideas later on in life? It's like, oh, wow. It's heavy, isn't it? So I just said, well, if you train me properly, I don't think any of this will be a problem. And I don't know where that came from. I really don't. But I just threw it back at them. So, God, I don't know the answer to any of these questions. How can anyone know? It's so big, isn't it? And I didn't know anything about the fire service, but it did the trick. And then next thing I know, I'm turning up at Wyndham to start what was a 15-month recruits course for junior firefighters. Here she comes, the first girl, hailed as the first woman, in the UK. And I didn't know any of it, so it's a mystery to me. And of course, the most hideous thing is when you start a job, all you want to do is not be stand out, isn't it? You just want to get on and, you know, keep your head down. And there's the press, so there's like local television, the radio, loads of journalists and newspapers. Anyway, so that was the start of 15 months training. There was not one facility for a woman, and I was wearing a man's outfit, of course. So.
Wow.
Yes, lovely look, isn't it, for a 17-year-old? Yes, I turned up there. They hadn't even got like a toilet or any changing rooms. They'd put a curtain between the 5 boys on the course and me, and the boys kept pulling the curtain back, and they're like having a peek at me getting changed. Excuse me. So I said, I waited one day. And I stood there in like my sports bra and pants. And I pulled the curtain back and I went, now will you F off? Like, you know, just like, and that apparently did the trick. And they then, the lad said, then they knew that I'd got a sense of humor, or, you know, that they could like, it was going to be all right working with me, as it were, because I didn't take any nonsense from them. Yeah. So that was that really. The lads were great. All of the instructors were great. One particular instructor was difficult. He was nasty man. But I went to check recently, and the way he was with us, this one particular instructor, like really kind of almost evil, sort of nasty. He still scares grown men. So I checked back recently when I was writing the book. I went to the fire station to see the people who, you know, used to work with, who are now retiring. They're like granddads, you know, on the Harley Davidsons. Yeah. And he said, yeah, this man still scares grown men of our age. So we had one guy like that.
Wow.
Apart from that, yeah, it was like, yeah, there's always one, isn't there? But apart from that, the lads were great. And the only trouble I had was going around some of the stations on secondment during our training period, that 15 months. There were some stations that, like, you know, well, I'm not speaking to you. My wife said I'm not allowed to speak to you. Another one was like, yeah, you know, some people completely kind of ignored me. Other people tried too hard, but a lot of the guys were like, you know, you're a publicity stunt. We don't really want you here. You know, we don't want you here. And we know what's happening. You're just there to make the brigade look good. And there's no way you're going to last through the course. You know, they really, it was like, yeah, earlier. It's 1982. So it's very dark times for women.
Can I just ask you a couple of questions? Can I just ask you a couple of questions, Jo?
Yeah, of course.
Only because what you've articulated so far is, and this part of your journey, you have stood out in quite a few different situations. The day when you turned up for the recruitment, being the only female, and then walking into the room and being challenged and asking those inappropriate questions at that point in time during an interview process. How did you feel?
God, I don't know. I think when it happens, it's so fast, isn't it? These things, you know, you just think, I didn't know what I was getting into, to be honest. In the fire brigade, I didn't know firefighters. I hadn't got a history of anyone I knew in the service in that respect, but I just didn't know what to do. I just kind of answered from my heart with these things, or just, you know, it's like, and my mum always used to say, they're going to stare, let them, you know, it's like that whole thing, they're going to stare anyway, because I'm tall and I'm kind of a bit lanky or whatever, and people always look at me because I'm tall. Even in assembly at school, I was like everyone else was like half my height, because everyone was in Wales, everyone says so much smaller, so I was really tall and everyone else was pretty small. But no, it is horrible standing out. And yeah, what you do, just kind of try and find a way to keep going through it all and hope that it change. You know, you have to pray that it's all going to change in time. You just keep going.
But you've got two choices, haven't you? You can either turn around or keep going. And what was it that made you keep going?
I'm quite bloody minded, you know. I was known in the end like spiky red-headed girl. That's my temper. So I've got quite a spiky temper naturally. And I'm super determined, and especially if someone says you can't do it, you know, I'm instantly like, well, yeah, I'll show you, kind of attitude. So I'm like, if you say I can't do something, I'll be doing it, that's for sure. Hence, you know, me having to, my poor mum and dad, you know, growing up, because I used to kind of do things that, you know, you're not meant to do, but I didn't really care. I like having my head, I guess, is the thing, isn't it? And also the other thing is with the fire service, as soon as, like, literally the day I started, the press were there, and you think, once again, they're following me now. If I fail, you know, what happens then? There are no others. I didn't see any other women, you know, only the control room ladies. There were no women apart from wives. So I was like a species from Mars almost. But you think, well, if it means that someone along can come along and do, you know, it is going to be a great job. You can tell, like, half in training, it's a fantastic job, because you don't know what's going to happen next. It's a real challenge of all your senses almost. You know, you learn to do first aid, you learn to, you know, life save in any particular environment, you know, kind of upside down, back to front, with half your equipment missing. So you end up being like a superhero firefighter, so fit and capable of doing your job. And you get that feeling about, I got that about 2/3 of the way through the training. When you put the breathing apparatus on, you're training. By now you're doing physical training all day, every day, really, classroom training. So yeah, you end up knowing, you get to a point, you think, actually, I know I can do this now. It takes time, doesn't it? Especially in a new job. But then you think, yeah, I know I can do this. No one's going to stop me now.
Wow. And when you said your introduction right at the start, you said you're an independent. And had you always been independent? And when you just shared that story, then you said that when you were growing up, you were doing things that you maybe shouldn't have always done. Had you always been independent, or was there a moment in your life that kind of gave you the confidence to be independent?
No, I think I was always independent minded. I'm like an Aries, so yeah, fire sign, and that's me all over. As soon as I could, even to the point where when we growing up in Wales, we lived in a cottage in a kind of part of the country that was really pretty. So we'd get loads of tourists in the summer. So my family rented out our house, and we lived in a caravan in the back of the garden. And I insisted on having like a little shed of my own behind the caravan, because I can't bear to be, I like to have my own kind of space. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I don't know.
So when you started on your 15-month training, and there were no facilities for you, you hadn't been catered for, and it was, and I guess, how did that feel? Did you feel like you were part of the fire service at that time, or did you not?
I think I didn't even give it a thought, to be honest, because it was only like looking back on it that you think how ridiculous it was that, you know, I was trying to, but on the other hand, because I'm the shape I am, I fitted a man's uniform without any trouble. So I didn't, the lads and I on the training course, we were very much the same, you know, we were the recruits, so we were being trained as a group, so we suffered together, you know. So being part of the brigade wasn't really me not being part of the brigade. It's like, as a new recruit in that team, we weren't till we kind of proved it.
Yeah, got you. And then the 15-month training happened.
And
were you successful?
Yeah, I was successful. Yeah, passing out parade. Of course, there's loads more press there. Yeah, they're all there then, aren't they? It's like, yeah, she's made it. And then, of course, they're like, well, what happens next? You know, so it's like, okay, passing out parade. The dignitaries come along, your family come along, and there's a big celebration. Then, yeah, I was posted to Thetford in Norfolk, which is a kind of a town that was. It was a London overspill town. So it started out as a really pretty small town, then it gradually got built out with loads of factories and estates. So it was a great place to be stationed, because it was like a lot happening. And when I got there, the chap running the place, Nigel Monument, said to me, right, just stop running everywhere and just enjoy like being here and doing your job. He said, you don't have to prove anything to me. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you're one of the team, you've made it this far, you know, so just welcome aboard and just, you know, do what you need to do.
How
And
did
of
that
course,
feel, Jo?
that was amazing, isn't it? You know, yeah. And he's like, what a guy, really. Big guy, 6'2", very calm, always calm, moustache like a Mexican. He used to sit there rolling up his cigarettes all the time. Off again. Yeah, the voice of calm.
Yeah, no, I mean, so
yeah,
because that experience then is different to all of your previous
yeah,
experiences, isn't it?
exactly. It is. Yeah, I've gone from people like saying, you know, sort of mumbling away, and you could tell either people would like try and help you too much, and it's like, just leave me alone. You know, oh, like guys, some not the guys training, but on the stations. So it's like, yeah, thank God someone kind of gets it. And we did have to do probation exams, so it wasn't, the testing wasn't over, but essentially me being under scrutiny for being a girl was over in that respect. Yeah, it's quite funny because I was always being mistaken for a guy and being thrown out of like toilets everywhere. You know, going to a toilets for fire prevention inspections, like, you can't go in there, they're banging on the door, yelling at us. And one lady, even a fire, and she rang up her granddaughter. As a fire we went to, chimney fire. She said, yeah, I've got this handsome young man here. He's just put the fire out. And I was like, oh God, it's come on, girl. Because I look like a, you know, like a lad, really. Yeah, no hair down, lipstick, no makeup at all. So it's the man's uniform still. I was posted to Thetford. Yeah, Nigel Monument in charge, and it was great. It just was busy, factory fires, chemical clouds, you know, everything you could possibly dream of attending as a firefighter. Lots of suicides in the woods. We had yeah, loads of there's air bases near us, so there was munitions, and you know, there was all sorts of nuts of stuff going on there.
What were the rest of the team like, Jo?
They were great. They were really great. Yeah, they were great. And in those days, we used to have bars on stations. So we had a massive, we used to take the fire engines out the front of the station and put these massive old curtains across. And we'd have like discos and Christmas parties and firework parties. And, you know, we used to drink such a lot there. I think firefighters in the day did. But, you know, now they don't have the stations, or you know, that even when I did the book, the editor, she's like, Jo, you've got to cut some of these drinking scenes out because it doesn't put you in very good light. All right. But we did.
I mean, so how long were you in the fire service for? And
I would say, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, it was great because I was in Thetford, and Nigel just said, do you want to drive the fire engine? Do you want to learn to drive? So I was like, yes, I do. Did that. Yeah. And then, but after a few years, I started to get itchy feet. I've got very itchy feet, and off I went. One of the chaps who was a firefighter at Thetford who turned up there, David Blakeney, a character like from a movie, he came along, bald head, he was like hardcore, and he'd been in the Spanish Foreign Legion. And yeah, so he'd moved back to Thetford, turned up at our station, and what a creature. He got bored after a while too, and he said, I'm going to go and work on expeditions abroad. So off he went to South America. And then I realized, you know, actually a lot of my heart has gone with him. And he rang up. And in those days, if you wanted to speak to someone in like South America, in the Peru, in the jungle, you know, it's a really difficult thing to do. So you'd have like maybe a minute, and it's all crackly, and he's like, do you want to come, you know, he said, do you want to marry me? He said, Mum's said we can have an income of £400 a month, and that we can travel on that. So off I go. So that was it, 1989. Yeah, handed my notice in. It's a bit awkward, but you know, I didn't have anything to prove to anyone or to myself. I guess it's more a case of right, and I have just got this need to keep, you know, challenging environment, challenging myself. So off I went, and we went to traveling in South America, kind of in the hardcore days. It was absolutely brilliant, you know, boats up the river in the Amazon, and days and days in the jungle, or weeks and months actually.
Wow. Okay, so just a couple of quick questions, Jo.
Yeah, sure.
When you were applying for the fire service, what did your family say?
Oh, they loved it. I mean, my mum is always really positive, so she's a real cheerleader. And yeah, Dad too. They were very, you know, there was no one going, you can't do that.
Yeah.
What are you doing? No.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. And then when you decided to hand your notice in,
Yeah.
what did your family say then?
They know me too well. They know if I decide to do something, there's no point in anyone going, well, you've spent all that time, effort on training. It was only really when I look back and did start to write Firewoman that I thought, my God, I went through all that and then I left.
Yeah. What did the rest of your team say to you?
At that time,
Yeah,
and Nigel,
yeah,
that was quite sad because we get really, really close, when you're working with these people. So, and it was quite a big team in the end. So you've got whole timers and you've got retained people who came in for when we needed extra people. So yeah, it was a lot of people to say goodbye to. And we used to be so close with the firefighter, with the families, with the discos, with the barbecues and the thises and that. So it's like you're saying goodbye to sort of not just the people you work with, but also, their families and the little ones and everything. So it's quite a difficult thing to do to go.
yeah.
But, yeah.
So you were saying bye to a lot, but what were you saying hello to?
Oh gosh, adventure. Yeah, and again, because we didn't have kind of growing up in those days, we didn't know anything about the world. It's like I went to maybe on holiday to America once, to Disneyland, and that was kind of a big deal. So then to all of a sudden kind of be in the middle of the Amazon when there's nothing, there's no nothing around and no one really around. It's you're there on the ground in another world. And again, in those days, there was nothing, there's no kind of internet or hardly any telephone. So actually, I love all that. I like to be in a place where no one knows where I am. So like in my later life, my happiest time is when no one knows my address, kind of in Asia. It's like, great. I like to be out of reach almost. Yeah.
What was the bigger challenge? Being the only lady in the fire service or being in the Amazon pretty much
the
all
Amazon
alone?
No, that wasn't actually because of David. He with his hardcore kind of training. So he was like, no one would come near us or him particularly because he could speak sort of gutter Spanish and like army Spanish. So the only thing that would ever happen would he'd have ended up in fighting with someone. But so people kind of gave us I think they sort of steer clear of us. No one ever would have come near us to kind of steal our rucksacks or anything like that because we kind of looked quite hardcore really.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, how long were you there for?
We were there for a few months. Yes, and we traveled then across to Ecuador, to I can't forget the names of the places now, near Colombia, on the bottom of Colombia, and that was back in the day when there was all the fighting going on. So and then we came back through the States. In those days, students, if they want to find a way to get their car from where their university was to their home, you could just apply to drive their car. So we got to New Orleans and then we drove up to New York and it was like you had 7 days or something like that to do it in. I don't know if it still happens, but yeah, it's a brilliant way to travel.
Yeah.
We'd hope to get a ship, of course, but no ships. Quito. Yeah.
Wow. And so when did you come back home?
Oh my goodness, it would be maybe 3 or 4 months. Yeah. And then we went off to South America, to Asia.
Yeah.
And there was some of our friends were doing Everest Marathon. They were putting the Everest Marathon on, and they asked if we'd help take care of the runners. So we did some like acclimatization, like trekking, and then turned up, in ready to do the Everest Marathon and take care of these runners.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some people that I talk to that have got, I've had a really random and crazy journey. And then there's you, Jo. And I think, what a journey you've had, isn't it? And we're not yet at the end of your story, are we? So
I've had about nine lives. That's what I pitched actually, as the book was 9 lives. Yeah, the 9 lives of Josephine Reynolds. Yeah, and they're like, no, Firewoman it is.
So So what followed? What followed these times?
That I got back to Thetford in time with David. We went to India, Asia, Thailand, back to England, and then we broke up. So that wasn't very much later, only about 2 or 3 years. Yeah, so I think we just, you know, it was all too intense together, and yeah, we drove each other nuts. I'm not easy to live with, and he isn't particularly either. And that was that. So I was there, and I was like, dang, now I've got to find a job because I've got no income. I'm back in Thetford. Oh God, it's a bad place, isn't it? So what am I going to do? And I ended up working for a company who do J's fluid, and they've got their kind of, one of their places is in Thetford. So you go into this massive like tower block of office, and it overlooks the forest, and there's all these factories below where they make the bleach there and disinfectants and things like that. So I just found any job, so I didn't starve really. And then that took me into their buying office, and yeah, so I went from taking orders for the ladies taking the bleach orders down to the buying office, and that was like the next thing for me, because I realized I love buying, I love factories, and I like production, as sad as it sounds. So yeah, so I ended up in the becoming a packaging buyer, so spending, you know, tens of thousands on printed packaging, and then met someone, and he had, the chap in Thetford who I met, he'd Tim been offered a job up in Lincolnshire. Well, no, actually come near in Stamford, which is a little way from Thetford. So I moved up with him, looked for another job, and this time it was buying packaging for a company, but it's different. So this is a company in Spalding who take plants and they sell millions of plants into supermarkets, but they do it in containers, like glass containers, ceramic pots, basketware. So I got there and I didn't know the job at all. I went to the like the filing cabinet, and there was an order for terracotta pots to come from Portugal, but I really did not know what I was doing. So I went to Portugal to see the factory, and then that sort of started a whole new huge phase where I fell in love with the job I was doing. It was so much fun traveling around, you know, going to these factories, finding factories and having them make samples for the supermarkets so they had something bespoke all the time, you know, in the right price, in the right place at the right time. And then that ultimately took me to a business with another lady, Julia Weaver, was another woman supplying into this you know, marketplace. And she, at the same time, I'd been doing my job over some years and I loved it, you know, and then all of a sudden something changes and it's a new management team and a new director or an MD, and he's like, Jo, one of us is going to have to leave, and it's not me. So yeah, I can't help myself if I fight, you know. I started to fight with him because I didn't agree with what he was doing with the suppliers and the product. So I said to Julia, and she was having a really bad time as well with her partner. And I said, why don't we start our own business, Julia? And it's like, okay, and that was that. So we, you know, put the thing together. We hadn't got a clue. I read all these books, how to start a business, you know, on your own, learned it all, taught myself at Excel, and would turn up to the bank with like homemade kind of projections, and I'm like, well, where are the sales? You know, you've got your overheads. What are your sales? I don't know. How does anyone project sales? So yeah, we spent some time with our accountants in the bank, and eventually they kind of put together a business plan, and that was the start of Silk Road Design Company Limited in 2000. So there we were. Julia had great experience of Asia, of China, and I had really good experience of Europe with regard to products and packaging.
Yeah,
and that was that. So we started like with one girl in China, and then we ended up with a proper trading company based in Shenzhen. So I stayed in Shenzhen doing mostly troubleshooting, and we were supplying at Harrods, you know, M&S, Tesco, with all this volume product, right place, right time.
wow.
And because I know, it's like that's what we'd been doing for the other companies, but then we did it for ourselves.
Amazing.
And you know, we know what needs to happen to make things go right. That's the thing in Asia. It's not an easy place to trade from. But yeah, all of a sudden we've gone through and like, and we, you know, she sold her car or her mum's car. So we were right down in like having no money again, like nothing. And then, yeah, put the money into the business, and gradually we started to, you know, get there, dividends and this and that and holidays. Yeah, and being like in Hong Kong and going shopping and saying, no, I can buy anything I want, you know, that feeling. It's such an unusual feeling for someone who hasn't grown up with much money. It's such a nice, like, wow, you know, made it.
Yeah.
And then, as you might expect, after about 6 years, yeah, I'd had enough and I started to get really itchy feet. So the business was successful. We'd had, as you would expect, we'd had some times when things went really badly wrong. You know, the product problems, problem is one of the customers wouldn't pay us, you know, those kind of things where you think you're pretty much covered on everything, and then something happens that is really out of your control.
Yeah.
Even though we were as controlling as we could be, you know, we've got QC teams everywhere. But yeah, so we had a few real rocky moments, but essentially it went really well. And then in 2006, I said, Julia, I want to, because I was out in Asia most of the time, I said, I really want to, you know, I want to like retire to and you know, do nothing for a while. And that somebody had suggested to me that because I was like so into the company, and a friend of mine, he's like, Jo, if you leave, they can manage without you. It's like, don't be ridiculous. How would they manage without me? And sure enough. So yeah, so she was all right. I took a bit of money out and bought myself a house in Thailand, which I rented out. And so that was in 2006. And the intention was just to never work properly again. In my mind, I thought, if I can manage that, I'll be happy. You know, never be at anyone's beck and call. So that was that. And then yes, I spent, you know, a good time partying out there, got used to the environment, fell in love with it. And yeah, so that was on Koh Samui. And back in those days, it was really kind of another Wild West place, but gradually, you know, 2008, 2009, more and more hotels and kind of spas and yoga places turned up.
Yeah.
And yeah, one of my friends there, Connie, she was a German girl, and she'd say, we used to just spend a lot of time having fun, really. And she said to me one day, Jo, I'm moving to Cambodia. She said, I want to go and work with children. And I was like, why? She said, I've got to go. I can't stay on the island anymore, because she'd had some kind of problems, you know, health problems, and she was struggling. And yeah, she thought the best thing she could do, leave Thailand for a bit, get healthy, then go to Cambodia, and she's going to work with children. I was like, you know, you haven't got children, I haven't. All we do is like have fun. Yeah. She's like, no, off she went. Yeah, the next time I saw her, she looked great. She turned up there, found a fabulous place to volunteer, a charity in Siem Reap called Build Your Future Day Centre, run by a man who had been when the Khmer Rouge came along. He and his family had been pushed out, you know, to the camps, and then they escaped into Thailand, found their way into UN camps. So he was only about 17, this lad at the time, but now when I met him, he was like 70. So yeah, that was those years later. And yeah, she found this chat, and what he was doing was working in a 4-year cycle of self-sustainability to turn people's lives around. Because what had happened after the war had finished, they came back home to Siem Reap area, and the police started to bring Seta and his wife, the children, from the street, because they knew they were a safe place. And then Seta's like, we wanted to try and get them back to their families, but you can't, because you give them back to their families and they just can't even feed them. They have nothing, you know, nothing, and no way of making anything. So what he realized what he needed to do was kind of set up almost like a program, teach the families or the parents to read and write, the older people to read and write their own language. So get that teaching back, teach them how to help them to create self-sustainability, whether it's like a little fish farm or a pig farm. Teach them how to, because everyone had lost the ability to know what to eat, even, you know, sustainability and so kind of what crops to grow, how to grow them, trees, schools. So he essentially was doing everything, building the schools, having the teachers employed, you know, and make sure the salaries were paid,
Wow.
school gardens, and so everything, wells, mother and child centres, in a modest way, but they were working. And by the time I got to, I went up there, he was on about 34 villages later. So he's doing village by village, almost like 1,000 people in a village-ish. And it's like, my God.
Wow.
So I turned up there as well to help. And yeah, that was it. Another life, isn't it? So you see the complete side of things you never even realized was out there, how people lived, you know, how desperately difficult it is for some people, because as an expat you never see all that, really. You don't really understand where you're at. So yeah, Cambodia, meeting Seta, staying in Siem Reap, by now calming down a bit, and because I knew if I stayed in Thailand I would have ended up probably in a clinic, because it's so easy to take drugs everywhere. It's really, so I thought, at least here, you know, I can distance myself from that. There is a lot of partying here, but it's kind of a safer, it's still partying, but not that same encouragement or ease, as it were. So yeah, so that was, and I volunteered there. I volunteered I was trying to find help ways, fundraise for him. So, and also then be like a kind of English speaking person in the office, because he can speak English but not brilliantly. So that's what and again, it's like Connie had gone there, and I thought, what on earth, how on earth can I offer my volunteering skills, because I haven't really got any, I don't teach, you know, or anything great, you know, sort of sensible, but yeah, there's always something. Yeah, and that then exposed me to a whole community of people in Siem Reap who were writers and photographers, humanitarian people. And that again then took me into wanting to tell stories. So some of the people I knew were going down to different catastrophes, taking, you know, telling the stories of the people kind of who were the forgotten ones. And that took me to back to Nepal, actually, spooky enough, after the earthquake in 2015. And I got up there, and the woman from UN Women Southeast Asia, she said, "Jo, will you write for us?" I was like, wow, yeah, I'd love to. So I've been doing a bit of journalism writing, but it was very much kind of, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just getting published a few here and there, but only because the stories were so strong. It wasn't really my writing technique. But she'd said to me before she liked my writing. And then when I got up there, she said, "Do you want to have a commission for us?" So, you know, it's the first kind of planes in, there's still chaos there. And yeah, so at least I could afford to sort of have a hotel, eat. And that I did, yeah, so I had that published, that worked for them. And it was, you know, going around seeing the effects that this terrible earthquake had on kind of more the women and the children. And in those countries, often it is the women and the children who kind of hold it all together. And from there, someone had said to me, "Jo, why don't you write a story?" And I was like, "I don't want to write about myself. I like writing about other people, but not myself."
Yeah.
Like, go on. They were like, so a friend of mine had a friend in England, and he's like, "I'll help you pitch." And he was a writer. He said, "I'll help you." So it took about 4 years, and then that's what happened really with Firewoman. I'd kept all these travels, you know, gradually losing all my stuff here and there, giving it away, and you end up with like nothing. And I got one box of cuttings, and that was my fire service cuttings. And he said, "You should, you know, you should." So that's what happened. And then 4 years later, Firewoman got. Someone said yes.
Wow.
That was, yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Jo. In fact, actually, before I say thank you, is there anything else missing?
I don't think so. I think that's it, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's I think I often say that this podcast has been downloaded in 155 different countries. I think Jo Reynolds has been to more countries than this podcast has been downloaded in, which is honestly a phenomenal journey story. What are your key lessons from your journey so far? If you have to like pick 2 or 3 things that have been fundamental to your journey, what would they be? I
think probably working out volunteering in Southeast Asia, in Cambodia for SETA, because when I do anything now, if I've got loads of things to do, I still help them. I've got a tree program running where we sponsor a fruit tree. So I take the money over here, £10 for a fruit tree with a tag, and they grow them on their farms from seeds. And then, so when I do that work, that kind of gives me the most pleasure. So that kind of supporting something that you believe in isn't necessarily about, yeah, we all need to eat, so we need to earn money, but essentially the stuff that gives me most satisfaction in life is that connection still, because it's so alive, even though I haven't been there for a really long time, it's just as, as strong as it ever was.
Yeah, I love that, supporting something that you believe in. And I think throughout your story and throughout your journey, you have believed, it comes across like you believed in yourself. Is that fair to say? Have you believed in yourself or
yeah,
not?
but I don't understand. I don't know whether it was something that happened when I joined the fire service, or whatever it was in me that I was able to join the fire service. I still don't know, because you don't know yourself, do you?
No.
When you see yourself, often you see things that aren't quite right. This isn't, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm not that person, and that whole imposter thing. But I don't know, it is obviously a character trait in me that I don't fear anything really.
No, I mean, no, you don't. I think your story, your journey is one of variety. I'm just going to use the word variety. There's so much in there, isn't there? If you had to give a piece of advice to the 17-year-old first female firefighter, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
I'd say don't have any doubts in yourself. Just really believe in yourself all the time. I'd still say that now.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you get to on your journey. You still think, well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm here, but like, what the next part? I don't know what's going to happen next. And hopefully, I've got a few years. So I think really the same advice would be just totally believe in yourself and your ability to try.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. What's your definition of success, Jo?
Oh gosh, yeah, I think that maybe when you can sleep at night, or you've been able to support people. I think it's always about supporting people, really. I think that maybe there's a thread there, like the fire service, very much about helping people. Being in Southeast Asia, when I got to Cambodia, and you get involved in these projects, or whatever project even at like food bank here, there is always something when you're supporting someone. It just takes you to a completely different level of, it just makes you feel really good about yourself.
Yeah, and I think throughout your whole story, it has been about supporting of other people. Whether it's when you were telling me about the challenges that you had being the first female, and some of the conversations or challenges that you were faced with at that point in time, your first thought, or your thought, what you said earlier on, was what would happen if they didn't let any other women in? It wasn't about you. You were supporting the cause for others. Your work in Cambodia, supporting others. When I said a couple of minutes ago about summarising, you said it's about supporting people with and having that purpose, and the fruit tree story is all about supporting of others. When you articulated about when you started writing, one thing that you said when you said about writing, it was your writing may not have been brilliant, but the stories of the people were sort of such strength that people would pay money for those, and they would read those and stuff. And it was about the women and the children and how they all held it all together. So I think when you said about there is a thread through it, your thread through your journey is the supporting of others. And it's quite, saying that now, when 40 minutes ago you opened up with, I am an independent woman. It's a little bit, it conflicts a little bit. Yeah. Doesn't it?
Yeah, you're right. It does conflict. You're absolutely right. I'm independent, but only as I'm like drawn into something else to fight the battle.
Yeah, you're independent, so like you'll back yourself, you'll believe in yourself, you'll fight for yourself, as long as it's helping other people.
Yeah, I guess most it is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Wow. How did they convince you to write a book?
Oh, he kept on and on and on. I mean, yeah, so I was living with a photographer on Koh Samui, Martin Goodacre. He was like, in the day, he took the photographs of like Kurt Cobain and all the rock gods. So he had like this amazing pedigree. And when he used to work, his partner, the writer he'd go out on these projects with, was a chap called Paul Moody. And so I'm there in Thailand with Martin, and they're talking about, you know, as I did. And so Paul Moody's in England working as a rock journalist now, and Martin's in there, you know, and they're talking away. And yeah, so Paul had published a couple of books by now, and then Martin kept saying to him, "You should see, she's got a story, you know, she's got a story." And they'd be looking, they're on the internet together, you know, looking at women firefighters, and they get saying, "Joe, you should really work on your story," you know. And I'm like, I did not see it. And it kept on and on, literally on and on and on. And in the end, I said to Paul Moody, next time I come to England, I'll come and see you. He's like, come and see me. So when I next visited the UK, I went to see Paul. And then, you know, that was the start of it. We put together a 4-chapter pitch. But the trouble was, I've got a terrible memory. So I couldn't remember literally anything. Awful memory. If I see somebody that haven't seen for a while, I just don't remember the faces, and my memory's just awful. So he's like, well, how would you have done that? What would they have said? And I was like, I can't remember, Paul. So this is like the essence of the book, was me going, so in the end, I went through all my cuttings and worked on the stories and interviewed loads of people with him up in Norfolk, you know, people I've worked with, and that's what kind of pulled the thing together. So it's not so much a kind of a diary of 9 o'clock in the morning up I get. It's more of the essence of it all and true stories that actually did happen.
Yeah, love it. But what do you think's next for you?
Oh, I've no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
If I'd have asked you that question at every stage of your journey, would you have given the same answer?
Yeah, definitely. I like that though. I don't like to be I actually don't want to know what's coming next. I like it to be a bit of a surprise, not to force it.
Yeah.
Because generally things have come to me from nowhere, you know, from out of the blue, which I love.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. If you could summarize your journey in a couple of sentences or a few words, how would you summarize your journey?
Oh my goodness, it's really hard to do. I guess quite blessed actually that I've been able to do it.
Yeah, I love that, because there's not many people that have traveled to as many places, had as many different experiences, overcome such challenges, and been able to have the self-belief to keep going as well, like you have. What would you say to somebody who wanted to do something new, who wanted to be the first at something, or just wanted to try something for the very first time? What advice would you give?
Yeah, there's like no fear in failure. There's no why should anyone? It's more about trying things. If you don't try things, you never know. I mean, you know, I've had this ridiculous life now, and it's all just because I always say yes. It's like, yes, all right, and off I go. It's something else. So yes, just say yes, or just try it, because there's nothing to say. You don't have to carry on doing it if it doesn't work. That's the thing, you know, or change the circumstances. You don't have to be somewhere you don't want to be.
Yeah, love it.
Change it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your story and your journey as well. Just a couple more really quick questions, Jo. What are you having for your tea this evening? Your dinner,
Curry.
evening meal? Oh, your curry. How hot? I mean, are you somebody like foul hot, like Vindaloo hot? That just bring me the hottest curry, I'll take on anything. Is that the type of person you are?
I do love a curry, but I like actually being in Thailand as well. Of course, you get used to such fantastic. All Asia, the food is so good, and we found a little shop here in town that sells all these amazing ingredients. It's never quite the same, but we've got chickpea and cauliflower. But so I think I can eat quite a hot curry. But at this shop they sell naan breads, but they got chili on them, so really hot. Yeah, and I couldn't even like eat a mouthful of that, so I'm pretty much a wimp.
but you give it a go. You still tried it. That's the moral of your story.
Yeah, give it a
perfect.
go.
Yeah, no, completely. No, thank you for that. And final question: if people want to find out more about Jo, where would they go? What would they do? What would they find?
I knew you'd ask me this, and I always forget my links. Actually, let me have a quick look on my card.
No problem.
It's actually if I send you the links afterwards, is that right?
Yeah, I'll put all the links in the description. The links will be there. Which social media profiles can people find you on most?
It's Firewoman one on Facebook. This is what my brain's like. See, I've got no memory for these things. Yeah, and then Instagram, it's like Twitter, pardon me, it's like Firewoman Jo, and I think Twitter, Instagram are pretty much Firewoman Jo.
Perfect. No, thank you so much for that. Yeah, but by all means, send us the details, and I will pop them into the description so people can see them. But Jo, honestly, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you a little bit better and just hear some of the I mean, you called it ridiculous, and you also called it blessed, and I think it's just a fantastic journey that you've had so far. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your lessons with me today.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you so much. Take care, lovey.